Of course, we're the locals now for over 20 years. But moving up from LA, it took us 3 major moves here before we finally learned to ask ourselves the right questions. And finally ended up happily ever after in the old estates part of Pebble Beach, which turned out right for us anyway.
And some people have a higher number than us. But don't think all the moving around that goes on here is some kind of mellow hobby like buying classic cars at the Concours Elegance. Moving is a misery for everyone. You move when you're disappointed. So, you might think maybe we just weren't lucky in the beginning.
But for the first 3 years, we lived in a picture-perfect postcard right on the ocean on Scenic Drive in Carmel by the sea, with little otters playing in the tide pools at our feet and a view across Stillwater Cove to Pebble Beach, and the mansions that lined the shore with the famous golf links for their front yards. To the left was the deep blue sea. To the right, the old Frank Lloyd Wright House sitting on the white crescent beach of Carmel, with kids and dogs and fires on the beach at sunset.
But we moved.
For the next 3 years, it was 5 minutes down the coast to Carmel Highlands, Yankee Point, for magnificent cliffside living, right on the ocean again, only this time in a big gated house that even had an indoor pool, a big yard for our sheepdogs to play, and a lot of privacy for a welcome change.
It had this amazing back deck built right to the cliff's edge, where you could just lay there soaring high in the breeze with the gulls, watching ocean waves rolling in, and whales and their babies migrating up and down the coast all year long. It was like living on the edge of the world, and we loved it.
And in the beginning, with both houses, all you ever could have heard us say was,
Wow! How could anyone ever leave this place?
Well, we were the ones who could do it. And maybe you would have too, when you understand a little more about living in this amazing little piece of heaven and the powerful consequence of the big wow factor at the high end. Because that's exactly what feeling lucky and still getting it wrong for you often looks like from the other end of the telescope in a world-renowned resort destination where the fortunate few have been weaving quaint little neighborhoods through the misty mountain forest by the sea for generations.
And you're gonna be feeling as lucky as a kid in a candy store too here in paradise. Except for one little thing. You only get one choice. And everywhere you turn, there's more big wow. So it's harder than you think to get your one choice right.
See, it's all your fault.
Without having regrets come up after you've taken that first big bite.
And you can't just put it back and try another when your elation moves on to greener pastures. You have to sell it to someone else.
Yeah. So, if you'll allow us, we're about to make you bulletproof.
Welcome to the High-End Buyer's Remorse Terminator. Hi, we're Sonia and Paul Laracy, and if you're a high-end buyer thinking of increasing your happiness by moving to Carmel or Pebble Beach or any of our coastal communities, we have a novel approach for high-end buyers trying to find their dream home. And here's why you might be interested. High-end buyers end up with buyer's remorse more than anyone else.
Because high-end buyers have the highest expectations.
Not too hot, not too cold, but just right. But there's a much bigger reason. High-end buyers tend to write that check a little quicker than most people because they're usually seasoned executives, entrepreneurs, professionals, or just wealthy people, so they can.
And sometimes on a whirlwind tour of intoxicating dream houses, even on the first day, before they even know it's at the other end of the street, before they even find their own favorite part of the neighborhood, the biggest wow of the day just lifts that loaded checkbook right out of their pockets.
Because the wow factor is so much stronger at the high end. Elation buying can feel right.
Because this is that magical place we've longed for. Somewhere over the rainbow, where there's always lots of great things to do in a miracle of ever-temperate, cool, clean ocean air. But even here, impulse buying is still famous for only one thing.
It often leaves high-end buyers holding potluck properties of the day on streets where they wish they'd never bought, once they actually live here.
Because inevitably, every single one of us is going to stumble upon our real favorite little nook or cranny in the neighborhood eventually. Our own perfect little pocket we fall in love with. And if that doesn't happen to be where you bought, it's automatic. You've got buyer's remorse. And if you have the wherewithal to fix your mistakes, you're probably going to be moving again. Or what was the point of coming here in the first place?
But you can bet no one but you is going to mind if you end up with a terrible case of buyer's remorse, because it comes with a staggering bonus. Every case leads to 3 commissions for the industry instead of 1. When you buy Dream House number 1, the seller pays a commission, but it's all coming out of your purchase money.
When you sell your disappointment, you pay the second commission you never would have if you got it right the first time.
And when you buy your real Shangri-La and your real perfect little pocket, the seller pays the commission again, but it's all out of your purchase money again. Of course, no one brags about these mistakes, but that's 3 commissions you're funding for changing your mind only one time.
And that's not even counting the 4th one you paid if you sold the house to move here. Bottom line, 1 miserable case of buyer's remorse for you, 3 commissions for the industry.
Or 4. So it's 1 mistake that cost a lot of people a small fortune.
But the irony is, absolutely no high-end buyer ever thinks buyer's remorse can possibly happen to them. Not because they're arrogant, it's because you love the house. Ooh, you love the house.
Wow, elation. And that feels like a free lifetime insurance policy from heaven to us all. But it's not. That's your blind spot. Because at the high end, buyer's remorse almost never has anything to do with something wrong with the house. Houses are great at the high end.
They just don't always end up being exactly where you want them to be. And that's about the time that location thing you've been hearing all your life goes off like a gong in your head, and you realize the word location, repeated 3 times in a row, probably doesn't mean something as big as an entire neighborhood like Carmel or Pebble Beach.
It means something much smaller and 3 times as important. It means your exact location in the neighborhood. Because no matter how dreamy speculators' glitter can make dream houses on cheaper lots glow, and sometimes sell for as much as the real thing to out-of-towners, it's always going to be the location that's the most important thing for increasing value and lasting happiness.
Like a simple log cabin overlooking a mountain lake can make you feel you could be happy there for the rest of your life. It's the setting that brings us the deepest tranquility.
Nothing wrong with the house you bought. It's just not exactly where you want to live anymore now that you've found your real perfect little pocket. And maddeningly, it's often right there in the same neighborhood where you shot yourself in the foot with your checkbook a little too soon because of the way things are done. And here's how that happens like clockwork to the most sophisticated business-savvy buyers in the world for underestimating the collective intelligence of a very old industry that's been doing the same simple thing for a lot longer than any of us have been around. Sonia?
Well, it usually starts like this. It's a very exciting day when we first land here to start seriously looking for one of those beautiful houses we've all been admiring in the magazines for most of our lives. You've probably made an appointment with an agent you don't know who's going to treat you like royalty, of course, and they're just going to start whisking you around on a whirlwind tour from one intoxicating dream house to the next dream house until you finally fall in love with a dream house. Just about everyone does.
And what's wrong with that? Wasn't that the point?
What's wrong is everything. It's totally backwards. Because the way things are done, it's only after you bought your house, after you've lived here a while, that most of us ever discover our own perfect little pocket. You know, that special little nook or cranny in the neighborhood we fall in love with, where we really are going to want to live for the rest of our lives. And it just starts working on you until you're finally swinging by to visit every time you go out the door. Only it's too late to find your own perfect little pocket after you've already bought somewhere else. But of course you find it anyway. But from that moment on, you've got buyer's remorse.
Because of the way things are done. By an industry that's good at selling dream houses to wealthy people, by acting authoritatively and playing on your emotions and the self-affirming impulsive buying that comes along with elation and being able to afford these trophies.
But it often leaves some very nice people holding properties they wish they'd never bought once they actually live here.
Because you evolve. You learn more, so you change your mind. And that's a great thing in business, art, and science. But when it comes to your dream home, it just feels like a whopping big mistake to get out from under. Because finding your dream home is an end game. It was supposed to be your reward, not an education.
So we're doing something about it. Because we've been where you are, about to move here with new hopes and dreams, and we feel someone should be welcoming people with a warm, open hand to this wonderful place instead of painting a target on your back. And we'd like to see that change. It's too late for us, but beyond our lives, we hope our Terminator will make the world a better place.
And that's why our Terminator is a gift, a resource, and you're hearing it now, whether you ever want to use any of the buttons on this page or not, to schedule your own private excursion with us, to find your perfect little pocket first. It's free, and all you have to do is listen. It's a novel approach for targeted high-end buyers trying to find their dream home to help take that bullseye off your back so you don't become an endangered species. Because even with our great locations, getting it right the first time still depends on not changing your mind with further experience. So we're giving you the experience.
We're pulling the curtain back to show you the common pitfalls of those who've aired before you at the high end, so that you don't end up reinventing the wheel when you get here, like so many of us did. Because for us, it took 3 major moves, and it didn't have to be that hard. Trucks, boxes, decorating, and redecorating, and redecorating, and finding the right place for everything all over again. When all you thought you were doing was coming here to relax, have some fun, and be happy. And some people have a higher number than us.
But no one could have been more surprised, because this is our field.
Good morning, Real Estate Excellence.
We've been a licensed real estate corporation since 1989, and we'd worked hard at our real estate education video tutorials business for California brokers and sales agents. And moving up from LA, it felt like graduation day for our lives this time.
But it wasn't. Like a lot of people here, we still had to learn the hard way about the high end. But we were lucky. Except for the one thing that would have literally saved us all the trouble in the first place. We didn't have a right questions button like you do on this page.
So, you might want to bookmark this site as a resource to help get ready for when you come. Because finding your own perfect little pocket first is the only approach that makes perfect sense. And that's why it's our novel approach.
And it can even be faster.
But the biggest surprise waiting for every high-end buyer is you may be the absolute only person with the slightest interest in finding that perfect pocket for you first. The one thing that could actually prevent buyer's remorse.
Because finding it automatically narrows the entire market of houses for sale on the peninsula down to a handful of sensible choices that are good for you. Choices you'll be picking for yourself along the way in your own favorite part of the neighborhood once you find it.
Instead of agents making those choices for you on the usual expedient whirlwind tours by pushing their own in-house inventory of listings on you spread out all over the place, wherever their listings happen to be, so they don't have to split the commission in half with the competitor.
Because if you buy any house other than one of their listings, they're only going to make half the money.
And that's why you're making those choices for yourself. Puts ice water in the veins of the industry. Because every agent in their company's best interest lies in selling you one of their exclusive listings where they don't have to split that commission in half. And they know full well that not even one of those few great choices you've picked for yourself in your own perfect little pocket may be in their particular inventory of listings.
But the problem for you is their inventory represents only a fraction of the houses available to see that meet your criteria on the real open market. So you'll never know if you're even seeing the best ones before that first elation finds you writing a check before you've even found your own favorite part of the neighborhood.
Before you even know what's at the other end of the street. Of course, the pitch is they're just using years of experience to narrow things down for you, just showing you the best, sometimes even discreet pocket listings, only for very special people like you.
Though they're often right there on the open MLS multiple listings for everyone.
But as a buyer, you know you're still going to be paying the same price regardless of commission splits going on somewhere in the background. So what does it all really matter to you? Well, what most buyers don't understand is commission splits can utterly dictate what we're being shown, while our future happiness dangles in the balance.
Of course, we know what you want. You want a fair shot at getting it right the first time. A clear, honest, unbiased view of everything on the market in your preferred part of the neighborhood, in your price range. Everyone knows that. So why not just give you a list of your real choices on the open market?
But what you need to know is everyone at the high-end's goal is to sell their listings first and foremost before they expire, or you stumble upon a competitor's house you fall in love with and they end up having to split the commission in half anyway.
And the only way to accomplish that is to limit your exposure. And it's something we don't even notice when it's happening to us. Because we like being carted around like royalty to look at any dream houses. And the locals know it. That's our Achilles heel that puts them in the driver's seat to control the client.
By carefully constructing whirlwind tours of dream houses that are in their inventory. Because no one likes to make half the money when they can make it all. So, like a lot of people who end up with buyer's remorse, you begin to ask yourself what you did wrong, that you could do right now that you know. Well, first, you didn't scout the lay of the land like the early settlers would have taken weeks to do on horseback, searching diligently for their perfect little pocket first, then start on the house. You didn't narrow things down to a few simple choices by even finding your own favorite part of the neighborhood. And like most of us, you put the reins in the industry's hands and got led around by the nose with blinders onto their exclusive in-house listings, spread out all over the place, so they wouldn't have to split the commission in half, even when they may know full well there's a better house for you right around the corner. Only you never got to see it because it had some other company's sign in front of it.
And that's why one fine day, after you're all moved in, you find yourself slamming on the brakes in front of that for sale sign, in front of that better house with your mouth wide open and feeling betrayed. Because that's the one you would have picked if only someone you trusted had shown it to you.
And that is the moment your head begins to pound with the realization you've got buyer's remorse because of the way things are done. Clearly, a better choice that met the criteria you gave, and only a few blocks away. Better view, better yard, better in every way. And sometimes even a better price. But somehow, with someone else doing the driving, you never so much as caught a glimpse. Of course, it's all amusing for the birds watching those tortured circuitous routes down there to keep your blinders on through neighborhoods you don't know as well as the locals. But what were you thinking? Were you thinking they were showing you the whole open market of houses in your price range, like hors d'oeuvres spread out on a platter?
Well, you may have just paid millions, and you've already got buyer's remorse.
But here's the genius of the industry. You're going to blame yourself, because it was you who picked the candy. All they did was show it to you.
But was it really your fault? Did you ever get to see the whole open market of houses for sale in your price range in the neighborhood you express interest in?
Which is usually a manageable number at the high end.
Did you even get to see the best ones?
Well, the way things are done, you'll never know.
And that's why most of us pick up the phone and call the same agent all over again the next time.
Have you ever found yourself wondering why there always seem to be so many high-end dream houses on the market whenever you happen to want one? Well, now you know. So the biggest thing that literally causes buyer's remorse is not you, it's the way things are done that encourage elation buying. For us, there was no Terminator, no right questions button, and no one focusing us on the importance of finding your own perfect little nook or cranny in the neighborhood first, before you ever allow anyone to start you off with a whirlwind tour of intoxicating dream houses.
But for you, there's a very nice alternative you might want to consider. Instead of just hopping in that car for the usual whirlwind tour thinking it must be the right way to do things, since that's how they like to do things, because it's not good for you. That expediency can literally cause buyer's remorse and leave you feeling betrayed and wishing someone had spent a little more time properly helping you find your favorite part of the neighborhood first, like we do on your own private excursion to find your perfect little pocket. Then start in the house.
Because our novel approach completely reverses the priorities from that shotgun tour of dream houses expedient for the industry to the all-important location for you.
Like the original settlers would have taken weeks to do on horseback. Only with us, you can opt for a limo if that sounds like more fun. And when we pick you up, just lay your head back and allow our Terminator's novel approach to make finding your dream home a fun experience, knowing you're progressing in the most intelligent, logical way possible to narrow things down to a handful of great choices you've picked for yourself along the way.
And we'll keep a list to take you inside the houses you want to see, then help you make a reasoned offer when your elation and your location are both right for you.
So that you end up living in a dream house that's also in your absolute favorite part of the neighborhood. And you can't do better than that. And that's a very big accomplishment if losing millions of dollars to misery is not your cup of tea. In fact, finding the dream house is the easy part. They've been building them here for a very long time.
So, that's our flexible private excursions to find your own perfect little pocket first. But our Terminator is the resource for targeted high-end buyers you're hearing now, whether you ever want to schedule a private excursion with us or not. It's free.
Because we're tired of seeing nice people who've only come with a smile on their face to join our community and be happy, end up with the misery of buyer's remorse instead.
Because of what is, in our opinion, callous disregard at the high end by the guards at the gates of paradise. As if you'd become fair game for having become successful in life. And no golden rule need apply as you run the gauntlet of your obligatory brief brush with the industry to get in.
When in fact, it's you who are the community here, and often the same people who create most of the good works of the world and fund every charity known to mankind. To us, you're our new neighbors, and we're glad you decided to come.
So we're showing you how that target gets painted so it can't happen to you. So you can protect yourself from what can be a very bad nightmare.
Or a pleasant walk in the park if you want to find your own perfect little pocket with us one day.
Of course, to be fair, every agent will show you anything you find for yourself. They'd rather make half than nothing. But even then, you can run into pugnacious delaying tactics to buy time to show more of their inventory.
Waiting on a call back? The owner's using it this weekend.
The other agent has to be there, you know, or the famous heroic, from their lips to God's ear. Just want to show you this really special one first. Just had a price reduction, so it could go fast, and I've heard there's some interest. One of the best buys on the peninsula I've seen in a long time, frankly, considering the quality. Of course, it's still a little out of your price range, but you might have a chance if you're able to move quickly. Would you like to see one of the best properties on the peninsula?
Translation, make your offer on my listing today at the asking price or higher, or lose this amazing opportunity to some sharper buyer who's probably already ahead of you.
And sometimes these things are true, but everyone knows there's no way for you to know. So you're going to be too polite to challenge the assertions, even when you don't believe it.
But believe it or not, you probably will become excited about that special one and start to worry if you're getting there fast enough. Because we've all been there. We're all human. And with that fear of losing the really good one, when elation does strike, you're all the more likely to act too fast for your own good.
Before you even know what's at the other end of the street. Because they're working your price range up, testing your resolve, but first and foremost, always pushing you towards their company listings.
When all you're trying to do is find the very best house in your price range on the whole open market that happens to be for sale in your preferred neighborhood.
And hopefully, even end up with a good deal without having someone trying to mortify you with the famous cut eye for putting their commission at risk by even asking if the seller might take less, when it's clearly at the heart of good business practice. Or finding the listing broker shopping your offer like flypaper to bring in competing offers and start a bidding war, when you thought you'd get the house with a full-priced offer. But all listing brokers' highest fiduciary duty is to obtain the highest possible price at the best terms for the seller, while only having the lower duty of honesty to the buyer. And that is a very big difference. So, it's time for the final step now towards making you bulletproof. Time to clad your Terminator shield with real steel. And in a few minutes, you're going to be able to deflect most of the slings and arrows at the high end for the rest of your life.
But as hard as it may be to believe, we've actually saved the worst for last, because we don't want you to feel discouraged when this is such a wonderful place to live. And once you get it right, none of this is going to matter in the slightest to your happiness, because you're the community here, and it's a big community of smart, nice people. But you do need to know the facts to get around certain human nature in any high-end community.
And as you can see by now, there are far worse things going on at the high end than just your own impulse to shoot yourself in the foot with your checkbook. Invisible industry things that act like blinders and encourage elation buying, that even the most sophisticated business people have no idea are swinging like a pendulum over their heads to keep this repetitive cycle going like clockwork. Like net listings and options, anxious high-end sellers sometimes give to incentivize and reward agents and other interested parties for pushing their properties hard on you by giving a predetermined bottom line number the seller will accept, then allowing them to promote the property for whatever the market will bear and keep the difference.
But it's a difference you'll be paying. We know of one such arrangement on a property overlooking Stillwater Cove near the lodge, where that bottom line was a $15 million option given to a local who flipped the property as soon as he closed escrow for $28 million.
As reported by the Carmel Pine Cone, and that's a $13 million difference. Clearly an extreme example, and at least those kind of deals require full disclosure, but there's no way to know the nuance that goes on behind the scenes sometimes, or how much people really understand about what is disclosed. So you can only use your imagination to protect yourself. But there are many invisible maneuvers often used on high-end buyers that really can influence anyone's good judgment, like carefully constructing whirlwind tours designed to artificially skew your relative sense of fair market value to a higher dollar notion. By using the constant chatter of whimsical sellers' asking prices they're pointing out all along the way on your whirlwind tours to make you think you have to offer higher than the real comps that you sold prices would ever justify.
And all so that when you're finally escorted up that last driveway to the target house, to the absolute best, most expensive house of the day at the top of your range or higher, your genuine elation and fatigue will make you the most vulnerable.
And after that discouraging bombardment of high asking prices you just endured, combined with a humbling barrage of endless houses pointed out along the way, apparently sold for far more than your price range, your friendly little serving of humble pie will make you more malleable to little compromises. Like giving up that view you wanted so badly for glitter.
Because they need to sell all of their listings, not just the good ones. Of course, you'd think there'd be a law against that by now.
But how can you even complain? You never even hired them.
What?
That's right. They're not even charging you one thin dime for this voluntary work they're so enthusiastically doing to help you find your dream home. Because technically, the seller's paying their commission, not you. Of course, it's all coming out of your purchase money, so it really is a technicality, but it's enough because you can't really complain about free help, can you? How's that for a well-designed catch-22?
We're sorry. Your call cannot be completed as dialed.
But the absolute worst invisible thing is something we call deal breakers. Deal breakers are things that the locals know that they'd tell their sister, but not you.
Like, the house you're falling in love with is in one of those summer-long foggy pockets that obliterate views and make it wet, chilly sweater weather all summer long. Because there's a 2-mile deep trench the size of the Grand Canyon just off the coast that holds a lot of very cold water. So no matter what someone might tell you, you can bet the summer-long fog is here to stay.
Of course, we love the beautiful fog because we were raised where it's hot. But the point is, will you? Some people find it depressing.
But have you ever seen any advertising showing those kind of pictures? Can you even imagine an agent on a sunny day looking out the view window of one of their listings with you, nobly counting off the average number of foggy days for you to even consider whether summer-long fog might be a deal breaker for you?
Yet, some very disappointed people pick right up and move to another location here over that very issue. They know tourist haunts and weekend parking habits with surfer vans in front of that adorable little cottage you're falling in love with might be a deal breaker for you. But how likely do you suppose it is that anyone's going to be bringing that up when it might scare you off?
And what about all the diverted traffic during our yearly special events we all enjoy? Unless you happen to have bought somewhere you're stuck in slow traffic timing again, wending some diverted circuitous route home along streets that look for all the world like quiet little neighborhood streets the day you bought your house. Some people don't mind, but can you honestly imagine a high-end agent bringing any of that up to make sure you end up happy instead of them?
Well, surprised? Well, a lot of people are. Because deal breakers are the invisible things out-of-towners simply can't see. And they can really leave you feeling betrayed. When a little honesty would have actually made it easy to get it right the first time. When even a little honesty could have literally saved you millions of dollars worth of misery. So here's a nice surprise for a change. You can find all of our deal breakers by clicking the Right Questions Terminator button when you're ready to hear the whistle blow on all the other local secrets that a lot of us had to learn the hard way to end up happy. And don't worry, there's no nonsense, no email requests, it's just free.
Because it makes us feel good to know that now you're going to be thinking about summer-long fog and weekend tourist parking and diverted special events traffic and a lot of other important things behind that Right Questions button, just enough to get it right for you the first time. Because these invisible things really are real. They're the remorse part people end up having to live with or move again.
Like us. Like a lot of people.
So, you're playing with a stacked deck in the first place at the high end because this isn't your field. And even Einstein couldn't have passed a test in surveying because it wasn't his field. But our Terminator is here now to cut that deck so that no one can deal from the bottom against you.
So, there's one last thing that may be the most important thing you ever do towards getting it right the first time. Ask yourself this question. How can you know you can trust us?
Well, our one and only argument is we are the ones telling you about these very lucrative, terrible self-serving practices instead of using them on you as well. We want to show you honor and respect for humanity can still be found, to tell you the facts so you can know with your own logic there's someplace good to turn if you have questions and no one you trust to turn to.
But before we go, it's pretty important you know what happened with those first two houses.
Because no one could have been more surprised when the magnificent beauty of Scenic Drive and the heartfelt, how could anyone ever leave this place, gradually succumbed. Because no matter how hard we tried,
the house was just too small for us. And after actually living there for 3 years, we came to realize we're the kind of people who like more privacy. We thought we'd like all the action at the point where everyone comes to watch the sunset. But you can't ignore your own feelings forever. And there's only one way to fix those kind of problems.
But the biggest surprise was Yankee Point, because it was only 5 minutes further out and we loved it so much. Still, it wasn't long at all before we started saying things like, "Not too many full-timers out here, are there?"
Or, kind of remote, isn't it? We just couldn't believe it. Most of our neighbors were hardly ever in town. Take a walk, no one around. We hadn't even thought about something like that.
And how likely would you think it is anyone's going to tell you something like that?
So we just started feeling isolated out there on that big cliff. And believe me, that's the kind of place where no street lights means pitch black dark, like you've never seen before.
When the moon's not out anyway, it can make your skin crawl. But here's what really did it. We can't grow old out here. one little aha out on the back deck one day, and our whole lives turned upside down again. We can't grow old out here, because if anything happened to me, Sonia would never feel comfortable coming home alone at night. And that was that. Of course, it might not have bothered you, but it wasn't long after that we were moving again. Just an obvious answer, really, to a simple little question you might not think to ask yourself at the height of elation when you walk into a house and see an indoor pool and a back deck that looked like the edge of the world and the entire Pacific Ocean glistening in front of you.
But like we said in the beginning, we were lucky.
At least we thought we were.
Except for that one thing that would have literally saved us all the trouble in the first place. We didn't have a right questions button like you do on this page. So it took us 3 major moves here to finally end up happily ever after.
Not too hot, not too cold, but just right. And that's definitely 2 moves more than any of us are ever planning on making here. And all because we didn't know all the right questions to ask ourselves yet. Or to focus like a laser on finding your own perfect little pocket, then start on the house.
Like you can do now on your own private excursion with us. Or even try on your own if you have the time to learn the area and a local you trust to help answer some of the harder right questions honestly.
Because here's the truth in a nutshell. Human nature, motive, and the industry's control of the local information has you on the short end no matter how smart you are. But you can still win 3/4 of the battle by simply allowing us to keep you focused on finding your own perfect little pocket. Then we'll find your real dream home right there in your favorite part of the neighborhood and help you place a reasoned offer based on real sold comps we can provide our clients instead of those whimsical sellers' asking prices, so that you can make a fair comparison to determine your offer with some genuine numbers and peace of mind.
So think about scheduling your ride on the high-end buyer's Remorse Terminator with us for a fun day on your own private excursion to find your perfect little pocket. And along the way, we'll help you deal with those important questions we all need to answer to get it right.
It's a one-way ticket to a more certain destination, finding your real dream home the first time.
But don't worry. If you like the idea of paradise, you have come to the right place to be happy. Because where else in the world can you find such breathtaking natural beauty in a world-renowned resort destination by the sea, where there's always lots of great things to do?
And a miracle of cool, clean ocean air all year long, with quaint little neighborhoods and happy people and white sand beaches around every bend, making natural playlands for us all.
And magical forests by the sea, with little seals and otters and whales and sunsets and birds and adorable baby Bambis roaming freely in this perfect little piece of heaven. You're gonna love it here. It's just an unbelievably beautiful place where people were meant to live. So we think it's paradise. So welcome to your new adventure.